What's up YouTube? Clip here with the Sunday Drive. Today we're going to install these Hello horns in my brother's 2016 WRX and give you a step-by-step guide. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Tool & Die Design. Thank you for hooking us up with these awesome shirts. This is their ugly Christmas sweater collection. I got the Miata, they have a WRX, they have a lot of other cars. Go check them out. The link is going to be in the description of this video, and thank you Tool & Die for hooking us up as always. And here's everything we're going to be installing today. We got the Supertone version of the Hello horns. We went with red, mounting bracket, and harness. Now it's important to note that you need to order each one of these separately. We'll have a link to each in our description. Warning, this is the bracket we're going to be installing. And that's it, just a bracket and some warnings. And here are the horns themselves. My brother decided to go with red for his car, and he did use the Supertone. You can also get the higher pitch tone ones as well, or sharper tone. But these are the two horns and a fuse. Lastly, you have the harness and a giant thing of heat shrink. I don't think I've ever seen one this big. Here are all the tools that we're going to need to install the Hello horns. Flat-headed screwdriver, vice grips, or preferably a vice, hammer, either a heat gun, or in this case we're using a lighter for the heat shrink, a 12mm socket, and a 13mm socket, as well as a breaker bar. Obviously, we removed the bumper. If you guys need to know how to do that, watch the video at the link above. The link will also be in the description of this video. You're also gonna notice some damage on this. This actually happened when my brother let one of his friends drive the car, and if you watch the bumper replacement video, you'll get to see the climatic crash, so you should check that out, it's pretty fun. First up, we're gonna remove the factory horn. Before doing that, we're gonna remove the bracket that it's mounted to, just so we have a little bit easier access. That's a 12mm. All right, now with the bracket removed, we're gonna go ahead and remove the horn itself. You're gonna use a 12mm, and I'm gonna use two, one on either side. All right, so that's what you just removed. Now we're gonna disconnect the horn from the wiring harness. Press down on this and pull out. And don't hit your camera. So that's your factory horn removed. And we're gonna be plugging our new horns right into this harness right here. Now we're gonna go ahead and install the Grimmspeed harness that we purchased. Again, the link will be in the description. One thing you're gonna notice when you go to install your new harness from Grimmspeed, these tabs right here, or these little things that the clip is supposed to go into, are a little bit further back than on the factory horn. So when you push this in, it's not gonna clip in there. You're gonna push it in, it only goes in one way. Push it in as tight as you can. It is still pretty snug. Unless someone's going to actually pull it out, it's not gonna come back out. To be safe, we're gonna take electrical tape and wrap this really good, and then take heat shrink, the provided heat shrink, and go over this entire connection to make sure it stays sealed really well. Slide the heat shrink over top, and then use either a heat gun or a lighter to shrink that down. Because I'm out in my backyard, I don't have an outlet out here, we're gonna use a lighter. All right, we have the electrical taped and heat shrinked. Now we're gonna reinstall this bracket. Right here below the hood release, we're gonna remove this 12mm bolt and this clip. Go ahead and take a flathead, pop that out, and if it doesn't wanna come free, you need to put the flathead under there or have a trim removal tool like this. Then take a 12mm socket and remove the bolt. All right, so for whatever reason, they decided to make the bolt on the back of these horns extremely tight. If you're going with the double horn setup like my brother is, you are gonna need to remove this bracket that's included. The way I went ahead and removed this on the other horn, I'm gonna show you guys how to do now, is put a pair of vice grips on here, have it so that the bracket, as it wants to spin, as you turn this, will hit up against the edge of the vice grips. You're gonna need a 13mm with a breaker bar, and then get a second person, or if you can jerry rig it somehow, to hit the breaker bar with a hammer. That will shock this loose. If you just try to turn it, this bracket itself right here will just start spinning around and you won't actually loosen the bolt. After much off-camera work, we finally got this nut loose. All right, just as you're trying to get that off, be careful of these prongs that you don't bend those over. All right, let's get this put on. All right, so now we're gonna test fit our bracket. We're just gonna put it in here, not tighten it down or anything, and put the horn in here and figure out where along this adjustable slot we wanna install it. My brother wants to install it at the lowest point. So we're gonna take it and install it all the way at the bottom of that slot. 2 washers are included with your bracket kit. Go ahead and put those on the bolts coming from the horns. and reinstall the two 13mm nuts that you just removed. Now I've oriented it so that these are facing downward so that you have the shortest run from your wiring harness to the horns. For added security, you can go ahead and put some Loctite onto this bolt to prevent the nuts from rattling off. That's optional, it's up to you. All right, we're gonna pull the Grimmspeed harness up to the top so that we can connect it to our new horns. When connecting the wiring harness to your new horns, you wanna make sure that you have one negative and one positive to each horn. Now, it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look inside the clear area here, you can just faintly make out a little bit of red inside of one of the lines. That is your positive or power. The other one is ground. So just make sure that you have those installed correctly. If you want, go ahead and test it out. If for some reason the horns aren't working, you have both grounds going to one and both positives going to the other one. Swap it and then you'll have it working. We're just going to go ahead and connect these to all four connectors. Next, we're going to go ahead and bend these down so that they're in line with the horn. Otherwise, you actually end up hitting the radiator. So you're just going to go ahead and push these over. They bend right down. Reinstall the 12mm that you removed from right here. And then you're going to reuse the 12mm bolt that was holding in the factory horn right here. Think they give you one bolt? No. As you can see, your latching mechanism easily clears. For the last step, I'm going to go ahead and zip tie the wiring harness to the center pillar. Over on the passenger side, you have one additional horn right here. This is your secondary horn. You can either unplug this if you want to or leave it plugged in. You really can't hear it with it plugged in, so I would just say keep it plugged in so that this plug has somewhere to connect to, and is it just dangling there, it's not going to really make the horn sound any worse. If anything, it adds a little bit of loudness to it. All right, so we're going to set my mic up next to the horns and see how these sound. Definitely loud. That's it, guys. Pretty quick and simple. One thing to note, you will not need to use this fuse if you're using the factory integrated harness like we use today by Grimmspeed. You'll need to use this if you're gonna wire it up yourself. If you guys have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you like this video, consider subscribing for a lot more content on my brother's WRX as well as our other vehicles. See you guys here next time.